Always love having my buddy Andrew DiCecco join me on Good Morning NFC East. I apologize for getting you up this early on a Friday, Andrew, but I can't have a show without you on, my man.
I appreciate it, man. How's it going?
You know what? It's funny. You know how I posted in a separate group chat about Westchester Diner closing, and I kind of wanted to hear responses from a couple people, including yourself. And I'm like, I don't think too many people are going to miss that place. I'm sorry, Westchester Diner. It is what it is.
No, I certainly don't like to slander eating establishments, but let's just say it wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, what of the Westchester Diner, since we are Westchester people here, I lived in the area for a couple years. Where is your go-to?
Market Street Cafe, and then if you look at the Downingtown area, I like Green Street Grill a lot. I think those are two high-quality eating establishments right there if you like to get up early and get some breakfast.
If you're a pancakes guy, I do recommend Green Street, 100%. So Green Street Grill, if anybody that goes there is listening or works there, salute to you. But we have to talk some football here, Andrew DiCecco. And the Eagles they don't play till next week. But yet I saw tweets, I saw reports, and I haven't been in practice this week. I don't know if I'll be going this week at all. It is a bye week, and I got other NFL duties I got to attend to. But why is it everybody seems to overreact to a certain quarterback that is just doing throwing motions during what is essentially an off week?
Well, Jeff, anytime you have a quarterback who was up for the MVP of the National Football League and he's dealing with a significant shoulder injury that cost him a couple of games, didn't quite look like himself the week before. We'll certainly get into that. There's reasons for that. But I think that there's always going to be skepticism, and everything that he does is going to be poked and prodded and looked at throughout the next 2 weeks. As far as what percentage is he going to be? Is he going to be 80%? Is it going to be 90%? Is it going to be full go? I just think that when you're talking about a player of that magnitude in a game such as the divisional round coming up, given everything the Eagles have accomplished this year, there's going to be a big circle around Jalen Hurts, and everything he does is going to be magnified in the days leading up to that game.
If you had to do percentage from Sunday's game based on your evaluation, how healthy did you think he was?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. I want to tentatively say about 70%, but you also have to take into account that game plan was largely a vanilla one. The Eagles knew full well that it was going to be Davis Webb and a host of backup players. Whether or not they should have done that or not, I think that they kind of took that approach a little lightly, figuring let's just run a vanilla game plan. We may have to see these guys in 2 weeks. Let's just get out of here with the win. Let's keep our quarterback out of harm's way for the most part. And kind of just run our offense in a very watered down way and kind of get out of the link with a win and secure home field advantage throughout the playoffs.
I always take things in a positive light. And when I was looking at the box score, I thought it was a good thing he threw 35 plus times. I thought that was good for his shoulder. I thought that was good to kind of get the rust out, something that they probably wouldn't have had an opportunity to do if they beat the Saints. Because I think the question would have been, well, why did Jalen Hurts play in the first place if he was sore? But you had everything on the line, so it made a lot of sense for him to play. Did you think it was a good thing they threw him that much?
I think they did what they had to do in order to win. I think that when you look at Miles Sanders, who was clearly dealing with something with his left knee, you have Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell, you mix them in. I think that they really just – I don't know if they ever anticipated, Jeff, that the game was going to go into the fourth quarter. I thought that their plan all along was let's pile up some points by halftime, get out of there. And I think as the game kept going on, they realized that the Giants were providing a little bit of resistance there. And I think that it took a lot of – I think that's what it took for the Eagles to win that game, because I think they realized that, oh, hey, the Giants came to play, and all of a sudden that their approach sort of – I don't want to say backfire, but that's what they had to do. They weren't going to be able to pick up yards on the ground as quickly.
If you're the Giants, playing the Eagles as tough as you did without your regular cast of characters, now you're going to play them against Minnesota. Don't you think the Giants have a little bit of momentum based on how they play Philadelphia this week?
Absolutely, and that's something that I've mentioned earlier this week in various platforms, is that the Giants are sort of – now it's a trendy pick, but I think that if you look at the quality of football that they've played down the stretch at the most opportune time, the Giants have a favorable matchup, in my opinion, against the Vikings. And they do have a path to victory. If they're able to play a ball control style of offense, you have a very healthy Saquon Barkley, who I think could see certainly upwards of 20 to 25 carries a game this week and be a focal point in the passing game. I think that, and then Daniel Jones, who presents a unique stresses on defense as a runner, I think you could see the Giants pull this off, and and their coaching staff has done a phenomenal job with. Let's face it, their offensive weaponry is less than adequate, I would say, and probably the weakest. It is the weakest of all the teams in the playoffs. But I think with Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka, Wink Martindale, all those coaches, what they've been able to do has been remarkable.
With that being said, now I think this is the closest coach of the year field in a long time, because you do have Brian Daboll, who took a team that we never expected to go to the playoff. Same with Doug Pearson, Jacksonville Jaguars. You could put Nick Sirianni in that mix. I mean, who would have thought the Eagles would have won 14 games? Kyle Shanahan winning with a third-string quarterback. Pete Carroll taking the Seattle Seahawks to the playoffs. It was just a crazy year for coaches, and you could make an argument for any of them. But if you had to pick, Andrew, if you had to vote, who would you go with?
Well, for the PFWA ballot, I chose Doug Peterson, and the reason being is he inherited a mess. That was a drastic turnaround for that team. I think they're going to steal a win in the playoffs here against the Chargers, who have been a streaky team. They're playing their best football when they need to. And you have to look at the development of the quarterback. Everywhere Doug Peterson has gone, aside from that 2020 season, which everything seemed to go awry, he's been the quarterback whisperer. And Trevor Lawrence has been my most improved player. I voted for him as well in the ballot for most improved, because his turnaround has been incredible, and he's a big reason why they are where they are right now. So I think Doug Peterson has you could see his fingerprints all over that roster right now, and he's largely to thank for getting them in the position that they are.
And I agree. There's something to be said about a team that won 3 games last year that was an absolute mess under Urban Meyer, and all of a sudden they're a franchise of stability. With the Giants, I love what Brian Daboll did. Don't get me wrong, but they were also third place in their division. That ain't their fault. The NFC East was really good, but I think there is something to be said about a division winner.
Oh, absolutely. I think that speaks for itself, and his impact was imminent, and it's sort of manifesting itself right now as we get into postseason football.
With that being said, with the Jaguars, what are your thoughts on Saturday's matchup against the Chargers? I feel like this could be the best game of the weekend.
It has the potential to, and I'm taking Jacksonville in this game, and it comes down solely to coaching to me. We sort of let in with that, and I think that Brandon Staley is going to get overmatched with someone like Doug Peterson, who does have that experience, and the Jaguars are playing their best football right now, and I think it's sort of the recipe for success, and it's going to be the perfect storm for the Chargers, who always seem to be a snake-bitten franchise. They've been streaky at inopportune times, and they just can never seem to put it together when they really need to. So I'm going with Jacksonville in this game.
The Chargers you're right. They're such a weird franchise. They had Drew Brees in his early years, and they never could win a playoff game with him. It wasn't his fault. He misses field goals. And then you got Phil Rivers. It looks like they're going to beat the Patriots in 2006. And I forget who had the interception, but he fumbles the interception, and Tom Brady gets a chance to beat them. You're right. It's a snake-bitten franchise. I mean, they went to the Super Bowl with Stan Humphries, for crying out loud. So,
but they're always hurt. They always get key guys injured. It always seems to be that franchise. Well, I think that sort of trend is going to continue, unfortunately, if you're a Chargers fan, because I think right now Jacksonville is playing some good football, and it's not a great matchup for them. Since
we're on the topic of snake-bitten franchises, who do you think is the most snake-bitten franchise in the NFL?
Oh, this is the Chargers.
Yeah.
There's a saying, the Chargers are chargering, like that. That's a real thing. And that has its own meaning. And that's just the things appear like they're going to be good, and they start to spiral out of control pretty quickly. It's always been a team that I've enjoyed watching, but it's always been maddeningly frustrating knowing how much talent they've had and sort of squandered opportunities.
They're such a weird team this year too, because you thought they were going to be really good, and they started out slow. Everybody got hurt. Brandon Staley kind of rallied the troops together, and yet, you're right, they still did a chargering thing with playing Mike Williams in Week 18, and again, they didn't need to play him, and now he's got back injury, might not play, and I mean, Justin Herbert needed Keenan Allen and Mike Williams to have a chance in this game. And I don't know. I just don't think they can get done with just one Keenan Allen.
No, certainly not. Then you're putting the pressure on someone like a DeAndre Carter who's thrust into a more prominent role, and that's not fair to him. That's not fair to the Chargers offense. I mean, that's what I mean when it comes down to coaching. Like, what a egregious lapse in judgment from Brandon Staley to play your top receiver, Mike Williams, who has a very unique skill set that needed, attacking the catch point, being very a focal point in the red zone. You're playing him in week 18. And this is a guy who has an extensive injury history. Knowing how valuable he is to the offense, total malpractice on his end. And that's what I mean when it comes down, when it's all in the details when you get to the playoffs. And that's sort of what I'm alluding to. I don't know how you do that.
That's why I got upset when some people said, well, Saquon Barkley should have played last week. I'm like, really? You wanted Saquon Barkley to play? Did we lose Andrew? Did we lose Andrew there? Is Andrew still there? Hopefully we can get him back here. But, honestly, we're talking about the Saquon Barkley thing. And what upsets me is there were people that want Saquon Barkley to play. And, I had Kevin Boyler. There's Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah, you were glitching up for a second. And you paused, and then it went away.
Yeah, I was like, did we lose him or did I lose connection? I don't know. Regardless, I was just elaborating about the Saquon Barkley thing. But yeah, there are some people that want Saquon Barkley to play last week. I'm like, could you imagine if Saquon Barkley took one carry and just blew his knee out?
No, I mean, that is their offense. They don't have a ton of outside weapons. We saw Kenny Golladay emerge with a rare touchdown catch. But that's the outlier. The offense runs through Saquon. He's also, I think he led the team in targets as well, if I'm not mistaken. Darius Slayton's an all right player, but he's more of an accessory piece, somebody that maybe is a good wide receiver too. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, that if you're the Giants and something happens to Saquon in a meaningless game on their end, I think Brian Dable's kicking himself for the offseason.
Yeah, and again, we were talking about the momentum thing. Like, you're playing guys like Davis Webb and Gary Brightwell, who, by the way, has been a pretty good number 2 running back for them. But you're not giving the Eagles your full arsenal. But yeah, you took them to the brink when they had everything to play for, essentially. Yeah, you go into that game against Minnesota, it's all of a sudden, hey, we could beat Kirk Cousins. We could beat Justin Jefferson. I did want to touch base on the Kirk Cousins playoff narrative, though, Andrew.
Sure.
Because he did win a wild card game in New Orleans a couple years ago as a 6th seed. I know the narrative's the narrative, but we can't act like this guy has never gotten it done before in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's one of those narratives that are every year it surfaces. Kirk Cousins isn't this, Kirk Cousins isn't that. He's a good quarterback. I'm not going to say he's certainly not a great quarterback, but he's a good quarterback. Look at the numbers he's put up. He's had some quality wins. Yes, he's predominantly done that in the regular season. Really needs to establish himself in the postseason for that narrative, for him to be able to shed that narrative. But yeah, he did have that win. But by and large, Jeff, he hasn't stepped up when the lights have been brightest. And I think a lot of people are holding out hope that this is the year that he's able to do so, given the season that he's had with Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook you have there. You have to make sure that you get it done. And I think that until he does that, there's always going to be some trepidation surrounding the Vikings' viability as a playoff contender.
Of the veteran quarterbacks in the NFC playoffs, and I'm taking Tom Brady out of this, by the way, because we all know what Tom Brady's resume is. It doesn't change if he loses this weekend. Which veteran quarterback in the NFC playoffs has more pressure to win a game, Kirk Cousins or Dak Prescott?
I think it's Dak Prescott. Given what they have to work with from a offensive firepower, given the season that they've had. I think that anything less than if you're a one and done team with the way that roster is constructed, I think that, and Mike McCarthy, there's pressure on Mike McCarthy as well. I mean, the Cowboys really stumbled their way into the playoffs and they don't have a lot of momentum going their way. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott, who's going to be facing a Tampa Bay team that can provide some pressure. And I actually picked Tampa Bay to win this game because I think that they're playing better football right now. They're a veteran team. And I just don't see the Cowboys being able to overcome that. Dak Prescott's committed a myriad of turnovers this year. And I think ultimately that when you're in the playoffs, the margin for error is so small that you cannot afford those type of things. And he's been really casual with the football. And I think that's going to surface again this weekend.
And I'm sure we'll talk about this if Dallas does end up losing. I'm sure we'll talk about this, but Do they have to consider Dak Prescott's future if they lose?
I think that might be a little drastic. I mean, you look at the Giants, and they're going to be holding on to Daniel Jones, for all intents and purposes. So it's really hard to find a quarterback in this league. Dak Prescott's not horrid by any stretch, but he does have some blemishes, and that's really sort of come to fruition with each passing year. But I think that it's twofold. I think that the Cowboys have a lot of issues. I think a lot of it stems from coaching. Dak Prescott had a significant regression this year, but I think that maybe getting him through the offseason, working on some of his areas of deficiency, and keep surrounding him with talent. I mean, they got a great offensive line, but I don't think you should be so quick to discard a quarterback that's proven he can win in this league, knowing how hard it is to find the guy, quote unquote.
Even if that guy, and again, I think that Dak Prescott's top 12 regardless, but you could say he's regressed to mid this year, or he's regressed to the mean. He's average this year. And if he's average and if he's 30 years old with that salary, that's why I brought it up. Like, is this guy just worth keeping around, or do you just hit the reset button?
Unless you're sure you have a definitively better option, someone that you could be that could be the face of the franchise, I don't see why you would swing the bat and go that route. I think that at least not this year. There's nobody that really that you could put your stamp on, especially if you're picking where the Cowboys are. You can definitively say is better. I mean, what do you want to swap him out for Derek Carr? I mean, like what are we talking about here? But you know what I mean? It's just rearranging chairs on the deck of the Titanic. I think you kind of hold on to him. And you do have to keep an eye on his successor though, because like you said, I didn't realize he's climbing that high in age. And the output, the production hasn't been there in the postseason like you hope. So I don't know that it would be this year though.
Doesn't it scream Derek Carr, since you brought him up, is going to be a Washington Commander? It just feels like Derek Carr is meant to be in this division.
Yeah, I think Derek Carr. It wouldn't surprise me. That's like a turnstile of quarterbacks, the veteran quarterbacks that come through Washington right now. They haven't found any sense of stability there. Derek Carr is another player that I think would benefit greatly from a change of scenery. I still think he has some good football left in him, and probably would make the most out of the weapons that he has there. Obviously, he had Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams had a fantastic season, but it takes a lot more than that. It's about culture. It's about getting out of a situation that you've been in. So maybe things get a little stagnant. But I do think that he has some good football left in him. So I think that would be a good match.
Derek Carr's one of those guys I've defended a lot of years because he has a lot of losses. But again, this is where I'm torn on the wins are a QB stat. They're not a QB stat. Derek Carr's never had a defense that was in the top 20 in the NFL. In fact, the Raiders haven't had a defense in the top half of the NFL since they last made the Super Bowl in 2002. They've had the worst defense in the NFL since Derek Carr's been there. So this is where I'm torn with that, because Derek Carr's pretty much done all he could, and yet this team doesn't win because they can't stop anybody.
Right, and that's why I think going to a team that really has they can really embody what it takes to define complementary football would really benefit Derek Carr and his skill set, especially at where he is in this stage of his career. He's going to want to go somewhere where has an opportunity to win. And I think Washington with Jahan Dotson and to McLaurin and some of the pieces that they have there, the twin rushing attack and Gibson and Brian Robinson, I think they have some pieces there. And then on defense, of course, a ferocious defensive line and a lot of building blocks there. So that would kind of be a good marriage if that's how it materializes.
Yeah, and of course he'll have his suitors, because I have a feeling the Colts could be interested in him, but they may actually want to go after a rookie quarterback this time instead of doing the one and done thing. I know Chuck Pagano was on the radio this week and he said that, but another team to watch out for with him, the New York Jets. It seems like they're going to be in the market for a veteran quarterback.
Oh man, what a messy situation that is. I was never a Zach Wilson fan coming out. I thought that there was a lot of blemishes in his game. You look at the quality of competition. I thought against Coastal Carolina, which was his stiffest competition that year, I thought he really struggled. I thought he didn't really rise to the occasion like you would expect a blue chip draft prospect to do. It seems to have maturity issues. That's just a messy situation. He's another guy that you teams aren't going to give up on. Somebody will take a flyer given his pedigree, but until he changes certain things about his game and is really willing to have his skill set stripped down and relearn everything, his ceiling is going to be capped as far as what he's able to do in this league. I root for every young player because I want them to all get a fair shake, and I think that he ultimately will. I just don't view him as a face of a franchise.
That 2021 draft class is so weird because Trevor Lawrence obviously is finally playing up to his potential, but again, that's how big coaching is for a guy like him. But then you got Zach Wilson, that doesn't look like he's good. Trey Lance, he hasn't seen the field enough for us to judge him. Mac Jones, it looks like he's a mid-tier quarterback.
Okay.
Yeah, he's okay. He's got attitude issues, by the way,
Yeah.
just from dealing with him in the past. And then you got Justin Fields, who has so much potential, and if you get the right coaching staff around him, I think he could be a Jalen Hurts, if not even better, in this league. But yet there's talk like the Chicago Bears should just draft a quarterback anyway. I'm like, why? You have your guy.
That's another thing this week that drives me nuts that I've seen as far as, is Justin Fields the future for Chicago? Of course he is. I mean, you see the raw ability, you see his intangibles. He's an explosive player, has franchise quarterback written all over him. Surround the kid with talent and give him an opportunity to be successful. What they've done and what they've built around him is criminal, in my opinion. And I think that they owe it to him and they owe it to the franchise and the fans to do the right thing and build it from the ground up through the draft, because he has an explosive skill set and they need to maximize that. They can't, why turn the page? The next person is not going to be set up for success either.
Justin Fields threw to this year an injured Darnell Mooney, Equanimeous St. Brown, Jeff Kerr, Andrew DiCecco, Tone Shields, whoever you want to name, that's who he was thrown to this year. So I agree. They got to get him receivers first and foremost. And they got to improve the offensive line a little bit. Outside of Taven Jenkins, it's pretty much been developing pieces. I mean, the Bears' offensive line was a lot better against in run blocking this year, but pass blocking. Ooh, I mean, there's a reason why the guy ran for 1,100 yards this year. He was running for his life.
Yeah. The offensive line really needs retooling. I mean, there's no way around it. They have a lot of holes there and a lot of opportunity to improve. On the back end of on the defense, I think they have a lot of building blocks. Love Jaquan Brisker. Kyler Gordon's a good player. Eddie Jackson's a good safety. I think that they have some good pieces there, but offensively, man, they have a long ways to go in getting that to an acceptable level.
Their pass rush isn't too good either. I honestly think like this is a year for them to trade down and maybe get a Will Anderson there. He could be like he is going to be like the Aiden Hutchinson of this year's draft class. The defense is automatically going to be better.
Yeah, well, they're going to have the opportunity to do so. That's why when you look at the resources that they have, how could you, as an objective observer, even consider the fact that they would draft a quarterback, given how many other areas and that need, that take precedent that they need right now to fortify? I don't get it.
The whole NFC is going to be, it felt like there was a changing of the guard this year, honestly. With the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, the 49ers, I think, are going to be there because of Kyle Shanahan all the time. But you're seeing a lot of older quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott. It feels like now the Lions didn't make the playoffs, but they're on the verge. I feel like Seattle, they could be not a mainstay per se, but with Geno Smith's second career arc, they kind of built a couple years there. They got a bunch of young talent, Andrew. It just feels like the NFC's going through a changing of the guard this year, and this is why it's a really good opportunity for the Eagles to win a Super Bowl.
Listen, the door is wide open for the Eagles to do it. This is the opportunity of a lifetime for them, because let's year to year, you don't know if you're going to be back and have this opportunity in front of you. That's not lost on Jalen Hurts. You can hear it, and you can hear it in the way that he answers his questions. The magnitude of this moment is not lost on him. And I think he's going to do everything that it takes. This is a guy who idolizes Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and all the fiercest competitors to ever play any sport. And I think that you see that materialize on the field. And to your point about the changing of the guard, that's very much so. I very much agree with that. I think the Seahawks might have one more run in them before Geno Smith turns into a pumpkin. And I think that the Lions are going to be poised for a playoff push. The job that Dan Campbell has done, we've mentioned other coaches. They start out strong, then they hit a little bit of a rough patch, and then you're starting to think this is the same Lions team, right? And then they really hit their stride late in the season. they have a lot of reason for optimism for that franchise, and I think that they're going to be a force for years to come.
And when I was watching Hard Knocks this year with the Lions, I've always been a believer in Dan Campbell. All the stories I've heard about, Amon-Ra St. Brown got some awesome stories for him if you ever get a chance to talk to him about them. But I was a believer in that team. I thought that team was going to be a lot better than initially thought. But I remember people were laughing at them during Hard Knocks and all stuff going on. I'm like, look, this is how football teams are built. It's if you believe in your coach, you're probably going to win one more game or two just based off that belief. And he was able to do that.
Yeah, the ability, it's a lost art, right? I mean, the ability to galvanize a team and have that mindset throughout the roster is a powerful thing. And Nick Sirianni has that. There's a handful of coaches in this league that guys will literally run through a wall for. And that's one of the things you can't measure. I mean, somebody looks at somebody like a Jonathan Gannon and they say, how can he be a head coaching candidate? Well, there's other things that go on besides a scheme. There's ability to command a locker room, lead men, communicate, or be organized and convey a message. And there's certain qualities that coaches have, and Dan Campbell's one of them.
Yeah, I honestly feel Dan Campbell and the Lions are about to take over that division. It just feels like, again, this is what's weird about the Vikings. I think this is why so many people are picking against the Vikings, because they won 13 games, but yet they had a negative point differential. The Packers who knows what their future is going to be, and the Bears, they haven't had a winning season since the double doink year. So it is wide open in the NFC North. I agree, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the AFC playoff picture too, Andrew. Who do you like? I know we talked Chargers, Jaguars, but who do you like coming out of there?
I like the Jags. I like the Bengals. I think the Bengals can make a deep run, man. Wouldn't surprise me if they get to the big dance. Those are two teams I really like. Chiefs are always going to be dangerous with Mahomes there. I know you like the Bills a lot, obviously. Those are some of the teams. I mean, some of the obviously it's all the heavy hitters. There's not a ton of sleepers outside of Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's got a chance to sneak a win in there. How about you?
I was secretly hoping Lamar would play this week just because I wanted to see Cincinnati get tested. I think Lamar could have been the big difference. Now I think Cincinnati's going to get through easily. But yeah, I agree. I really like this Bills team a lot. And then playing the Chiefs on a neutral site, I think that evens it out a bit. Because
it does.
It does. Like, if you go in the Arrowhead, it's a lot that I know the Bills have won there, but so have the Chiefs. It's been I am kind of hoping for that Chiefs-Bills rematch, although I do got to ask you, did you like where they picked the neutral site?
Nah, I wasn't crazy about it. I wasn't crazy about that. I thought that they were going to do. Well, I'm sure you were hoping for like Happy Valley, or you were probably hoping for Beaver Stadium.
I was hoping for a cold weather site. I didn't care where it was.
Yeah, that was a little interesting.
Yeah, the whole Georgia Dome thing. I get part of it's based on the availability. I mean.
Or they call it the Mercedes-Benz, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, Mercedes-Benz. Again, beautiful stadium, but
I
really hope the rumor isn't true. And again, keep in mind who's saying it. It's Mike Florio. But the NFL has wanted to kind of test neutral site conference championship games. I think that just diminishes the whole point of a conference championship game.
Yeah, you work your whole season for that luxury, right? And to have that stripped away, or the possibility of having that go away, I mean, that really diminishes what you're working towards all season. And I think you should be rewarded for the season that you have. So that would kind of be, that would be malpractice on my part, from my view.
Yeah, can you imagine, like, if the Eagles and the 49ers, they had to play the conference championship game in Indianapolis? I think people would be just beyond furious that they'd have to leave Philadelphia, and San Francisco would get a pass.
Yeah, I mean, that automatically gives it would give, like, in that case, the 49ers an advantage. You're getting the Eagles out of their home turf and putting them on a neutral site when ordinarily they would have a distinct advantage at the link. And now all of a sudden that really even levels the playing field, and that's not fair. I that wouldn't make any sense to me.
Ultimately, though, that's why I think the Eagles are going to go to the Super Bowl. I think it's because they did wrap up that number one seed. They have home field advantage. And again, San Fran may be a better team than the Eagles. I'm still kind of reserving judgment on that. I think they're really, really good, but I'm reserving judgment on that because they would have to go into Philadelphia and play them. I just don't know if you can combine the fan base, how the Eagles play at home, Jalen Hurts playing like an MVP, that defense getting to the quarterback. It just feels like a perfect storm of, okay, the Eagles, if push comes to shove, the Eagles could win a touchdown score game.
Yeah, listen, with Jalen Hurts, he's going to do everything that it takes to win, whether he's playing through pain, whether he's 100%, that he's not going to let the moment slip away. And I think that's a scary, I mean, if you're the opposition, that's a scary player you're going to be faced on the opposite sideline, because he's going to do whatever it takes to win. And then when you factor in the fan base, the weather, the ferocious pass rush that the Eagles have, Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, you're getting him back. He practiced yesterday. I mean, they're just going to have the full gamut of pass rush. Robert Quinn's healthy now. You throw him in there for another 15, 18 snaps a game. You got your defensive backfield. Of course, I think the Eagles have the best secondary in the league. I thought Denard Wilson, the defensive back coach, has done a great job. Also got to give a shout out to James Bradbury, for me, I voted for one of the two corners, Sauce Gardner being the other, for the all-NFL team for Pro Football Writers of America. I think Bradbury's been the smartest corner I've had the pleasure of watching and seeing and covering up close. I just think what he presents opposite Darius Slay, and I think he's been the more consistent player. The Eagles they can beat you in a multitude of ways. So it's tough for any team to come into the link and win.
Why do you think there's been so much disrespect in the Vegas odds? Like 49ers are plus 450. The Eagles are plus 550. They have the fourth best odds to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, Chiefs and the Bills are higher than them. Just why do you think it's the disrespect? Is it because it hurts?
It's because of the shoulder, and I also think it's because of the Eagles swinging and missing on a couple of opportunities late in the season to be able to sit starters and things like that. You could argue, I think if you're looking at it objectively, you can argue that the offense has hit a skid and they're not necessarily playing their best football going into the playoffs. I don't believe that. I think they're going to they have 2 weeks to put together a game plan. I think they're going to be just fine. But I think if you're looking at it from Vegas perspective, it's, what are the Eagles and what direction are they headed? And there's might be some question marks.
Overall, though, what's the Super Bowl matchup you want?
I think a really fun Super Bowl for me would be the Eagles and that offense versus the Cincinnati Bengals and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Burrow. I think that would be fun. That both teams have strong defenses, and I think that it would be there would be a lot of fireworks in that game early on. I think, to me, that would be the most ideal matchup, and I think it would be enjoyable for many of the observers out there who like watching offense, a lot of offense.
I would agree with you too. Like, if it's the Eagles versus any of the big three AFC teams, I think you would get a fun Super Bowl, just based on, like you said, the whole Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. If it's Buffalo's never won a Super Bowl. You got two of the craziest fan bases going to Arizona, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs.
No doubt.
Yeah, all those guys. And Kansas City, I mean, I was asked this on Kansas City Radio Monday. How fun would it be to see Andy Reid go against the Eagles?
Yeah, that would be fun. How about Doug Peterson? I mean, obviously that would be that would take a lot for the Jags to get there, but Doug Peterson versus Nick Sirianni would be great too. That'd be a fun week to cover. That
would be, again, if the Jaguars would ever make a Super Bowl, keep in mind they've never made one.
Right.
I joked with a lot of their fans when I covered the Hall of Fame stuff in Canton because Baselli got in. Like, what is this, all Duval County? And they're like, nah, come on, man. You can't bust on Jaguars fans for that. We win, we sell out. Well, they proved my point, because that place was loud last Saturday night. I can't imagine what it's going to be this week.
It was definitely electric, and they really get behind their team. And to their credit, they get behind them in the good times and the bad. I covered them for a little bit for SI a number of years ago, and just a very passionate, dedicated fan base. So I'm really happy for them, and I really like what Doug Peterson's doing, and I certainly love what Trevor Lawrence is doing on the field. A lot of reason for optimism for that franchise.
Yeah, I agree. It almost feels like Andy Reid and Don McNabb in 2000. Like, it's going to be the start of a nice run in Jacksonville. And again, Andrew, love having you on. Gonna have to get you on again before maybe next week, before we'll preview the playoff game a little more. But
sure.
Always a pleasure having you on, my friend.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Likewise. So take care, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, we will. I'll see you next week. All right, Andrew DiCecco.